Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a chilly Thursday afternoon here in suburban Chicago, and I'm out strolling around recording a podcast for you. Actually, I think I might record two here. We'll see how I feel, if I get too chilly or not. It is cloudy. It looks like it's going to rain or snow. Probably snow. It's too cold to rain. It looks like we certainly could get some weather here in the evening, although I haven't looked at the forecast, so it might just be overcast. Well, it's been a strange year so far, but that doesn't stop me from coming out and podcasting about something absolutely unrelated to most of the world, i.e. games. It occurred to me as I was doing some episodes, actually the last episode I was recording, that I had several games I've played that I have not talked about with you fine folks. Actually, 3 to be precise. I've played a bunch of single-play games, some unlocks and some exits and an undo, which I've talked about a little bit, but I have a couple games that I haven't really discussed on the podcast yet, so it seems like it's time. That means it's time for a shooting from the hip triple shot. That's right, we're going to talk about 3 games, back to back to back, quick succession, my early thoughts on them, having played them just a couple times. Actually, yeah, each of these games I have 2 plays, so that's kind of fun. Let's start with Gingerbread House. This game came into my collection with a spur-of-the-moment purchase at a local game store I haven't been to in a while. This is Grandmaster Games, I think it's called. It is the game store in Oak Park, Illinois, where I used to buy my Netrunner cards before I moved away from there. And it's a nice little shop, very nice shop owners, fun folks to see, and a really good selection of games. Not only did I find the Carney's expansion for the Bloody Inn there, which is really hard to find, but I also found the Phil Walker Harding game, Gingerbread House, which I've had my eye on for a while. I've seen it get some pretty good reviews, but I haven't had a chance to pick it up until now. I got it home and we tried it a couple times over Christmas break, and it's my chance to talk about it. Phil Walker Harding is a really interesting designer. He's very good at light to light medium family games. His work really sings at that level of easy to introduce, easy to explain, thinky to play, crunchy to win at. So on the lighter end, he's done games like Sushi Go, and I think there's one called Greedy Goblins. I haven't played that one. And then his more well-knowns are designs like Imhotep, and Gizmos is another one that he did. And then my 2 favorites are Barren Park and Gingerbread House. I don't like Gingerbread House as much as Barren Park, at least not on the first couple of plays, but it is really good. Here's how it works. You are a witch living in the fantasy forest, and you really like making stuff out of gingerbread. You have a house made out of gingerbread. You enjoy building things out of gingerbread. What happens when you do that? Nosy, hungry fantasy characters from the forest come by and eat the things off your house. Very annoying. So what you do is you start trapping them. The game euphemistically says trapping them by luring them into the house by baking things they'd like. The theme is pretty silly, but it works really well and makes the game fun and makes it feel a little different. It's a pattern matching game. You have these tiles. They're sort of domino-like. They're longer than they are wide, and they have 2 icons on them, so you can kind of flip them one way or another. And you're kind of stacking up these tiles and then covering them. And when you cover one tile with another, you get the things that are on the tiles you covered. So there's this element of kind of planning ahead, and you get bonuses depending on whether you're covering multiple tiles of the same icon and that sort of thing. You use the resources that you gather to trap these forest characters, and that's how you get the bulk of your points. But then you also get these bonus cards that build off of the kinds of characters you're trapping. So you might get a card that gives you points for every human character you trap. So then you want to focus on trapping human characters. And you might get another card that gives you a point for every kind of a particular cookie that those humans like. That sort of thing. It's got an interesting stacking element, an interesting bonus acceleration element, and it plays pretty quick. All in all, it's a lovely theme and a lovely game. nice and crunchy. Not as good as Barren Park, I would say. More rewarding thought-wise than something like Sushi Go, which is a pretty light drafting game. And of course, I didn't really like Imhotep, so... but I do like it better than Gizmos, I think, if for no other reason that my family likes it better than Gizmos. So while I do like the engine building that comes with Gizmos, I can't really play it that much, at least not in the current gaming world. So in that regard, Gingerbread House comes out on top for me. That's Gingerbread House from Phil Walker Harding. I think Lookout Games is the publisher, although I did not look that up ahead of time. All right, the second game I would like to talk about is another game that came into our collection recently. Actually, it was part of my family's Christmas game bonanza. This is New York Zoo. New York Zoo is a tile placement game from legendary designer Uwe Rosenberg, designer of things like Agricola and A Feast for Odin and Patchwork and on and on and on, many games. I like Rosenberg's work quite a bit. I have enjoyed the tile laying games of his that I've played, but I haven't purchased very many of them. I'm trying to think if I've bought any of them, actually. He did a whole series of them that I have not played or purchased, but I really like some of his heavier fare, so this one looked like a no-brainer. The theme is really fun. You're raising zoo animals. I heard one podcast describe this as combining the animal husbandry of Agricola with the tile laying of Patchwork, and that's actually a decent approach. The premise is you're building a zoo or something, and there's 5 different kinds of animals you can get. They have these cute little plastic animal meeples, and on your turn you use the Patchwork sort of wheel to move. You move a piece forward between 1 and 3 or 1 and 4 spots, and you take a thing and you put that on your board and add animals to it. Then there's a whole element where the animals breed, and then you get more animals, and whenever you take a tile, you have to be able to put an animal on it. So sometimes you can't take a tile, and it's a whole big thing. One of the things I like about it is that the rhythm of the game oscillates. Early on in the game, you want to get lots of tiles, but you're limited by how many animals you have. And there's a temptation to accelerate the speed where you cash out the animals. If you get a certain number, if you fill up one of your animal pens, then you cash them out and you get a bonus tile, which helps you fill up your board faster, which is how you win the game. But whenever you cash out your animals, you lose enough of them that it can be hard to keep the breeding program going. So the game also offers you a competing incentive to move the animals around in order to make the breeding more efficient or more lucrative. But then you don't cash the animals out as quickly, and other people get those big bonus tiles. So there's an interesting balance to weigh there that makes the game feel different at 2 or at 5 players than it does at 2. And I've played it at both at 4, 5, and 2 at player counts. Ultimately, it's a race game, which is interesting because when you first approach the game, it seems like it would be a points game. You know, your Agricola, Agricola, great, all creatures great and small, your Feast for Odin. So these are games you play for points, and you expect that New York Zoo is going to be a game for points as well. And when it turns out not to be, it's a little strange. It's actually a race game. You're trying to fill up your board first. And then there's a tiebreaker if more than one person fills their board up on the same turn. But that seems unlikely. So that's New York Zoo, an interesting game. I'm not sure it's going to have intense replayability. I suspect after 10 or a dozen plays, it's probably going to get kind of samey. But it's probably a really good one to break out occasionally, or to break out with new people who haven't played the game before, just because it's a different kind of experience. In terms of enjoyment, probably fits pretty close to Reykholt, which is another game where Uwe Rosenberg kind of took a couple of his systems and refashioned them into a slightly lighter game with lovely art, and is another game I own, actually. Although this one, the little animal meeples take you over the top. I mean, they got these super cute meerkats and these flamingos. I would say one downside is the graphic design makes it somewhat difficult, not arduous. I mean, you just pay attention, you can do it. But several of us made the mistakes at various times of thinking the meerkats depicted on the board were kangaroos and vice versa. The miniatures, the meeples, are a totally different color and shape, so you can't mistake them on your board, but as they're depicted in the drawings, at a quick glance, I mean, I would say they look different enough that you shouldn't mistake them, but I did several times and so did other people. So it must actually be a problem because it actually was a problem. So that's a minor complaint in the otherwise quite delightful New York Zoo from Uwe Rosenberg. Plays 1 to 5 players. So that's a nice flexible player amount as well. All right. So the third game I wanted to talk about today in my shooting from the hip triple shot is Trails of Tucana. Trails of Tucana is a new flip and write game from Aporta Games, I believe is the publisher. One of the designers is Christian Ostby, who I know from Escape Curse of the Temple, but he and the other designer, whose name I don't remember right now, also designed Avenue of the Kodama, among other games. And it's that game to which this feels like a successor. In Trails of Tucana, you are building trails through the jungle, nominally to connect villages with sightseeing monuments that they might want to check out, and with each other. So over the course of the game, you're sort of drawing lines through this jungle to connect villages to sort of key items in the jungle and to one another. You do this by flipping cards, and it's a really simple system. There are a deck of cards that have one of 5 terrain types on them. You flip 2 terrain types, 2 cards, and you draw a line between 2 hexes of those terrain types. So there's a ton of flexibility in what kind and when the different terrain types are going to come up. So you're constantly having to rethink how the maps are going to look. And the game has a nice little ladder thing. So there are 2 ways that you score points. You score points for connecting villages to monuments and for connecting villages to one another. The villages to one another give you a lot of points, so it's really important that you do that. I don't think I've won a game where I only connected 1 village. You have to connect at least 2 villages or 2 pairs of villages. And I would say on top of that, you really need 3 if you want to, knock it out of the park. But here's the thing, you can't just focus on connecting villages because the monuments are what get you extra are what get you extra drawings. So the way that works is every time you get a monument, you circle a indicator on your score pad. And once you've gotten all the monuments of a particular type, then you get 1 bonus drawing, 1 bonus line connection. The result of that is that you often end up getting this kind of chain reaction where you secure your 3rd obelisk or your 2nd obelisk, and then that lets you draw a line that lets you secure your 2nd book, which lets you secure something else. So that's kind of part of the chain reaction there. You also really want to lean into the monuments in the first half of the game because you get these bonuses. The monuments score both the first half and the second half of the game. And so if you've leaned into that, you get extra points. The game comes with 2 maps, the Isla Petite and Isla Grande maps. So you can play a shorter game and a longer game. And the shorter game takes like 15 minutes if you've played before. The longer game is more like 20. Trails of Tucana is a delightful path drawing game. Not incredibly deep or replayable, I would say. We certainly will enjoy playing it a fair number of times at my house. I imagine we'll go through most of the pad eventually. But it's one of those games where it's really the same game every time. They've got a slight variation in the bonus cards that you can use. The map changes around each time. There's a randomizer that gives you different setups for the villages each time, so you're not always drawing the same paths. There's no way to optimize because between the combination of the mixed order of cards and the changing orientation of where the villages are, you're never going to end up with the same map, even if the general strategies apply from game to game. And frankly, it's much more satisfying than something like Avenue of the Kodama, which is based on an older game, Avenue. The big limitation of that game is that you weren't allowed to rotate the shapes you had to draw. So if you drew the corner coming up from the bottom and going to the left in Avenue, you had to draw it that way, which made Avenue feel very constricting. It was a difficult game that you really had to focus on careful planning to the point where it sometimes wasn't fun. Trails of Tucana has that same planning element. It's got the same element where you feel like you miss an opportunity sometimes, where you don't get the card you want at the time you want it, and it feels really bonkers difficult. You're sort of cursing the sky for not giving you what you needed, but it does ultimately feel more fun. So if you are interested in Trails of Tucana, I recommend go to the Rado Runs Through YouTube channel and search Trails of Tucana. He and his wife Jen did a live play on camera, and they put a link to the map which you can print out. So you can choose to try the game before you buy it, which is what I did, and I liked it so much I went and pre-ordered it immediately. That was last June, and it took them that long to get the game out. Yay, COVID. But we've really enjoyed it. I got it. It was my Christmas gift from our Christmas game Bonanza, and we've played it 4 or 5 or 6 times already since then. Often we end up playing 2 games in a row because the front of each sheet has the Isla Petite mark on it, and the back of each sheet has the Isla Grande map. So you getting to do both is kind of a nice, works out nicely. As a two round game that then is pretty enjoyable lengthwise. So what games have you been playing lately? Have you got anything you brought off the shelf recently that you'd like to tell me about? You can do that over on Board Game Geek and Guild 3269, where I would love to hear from you. The pick up and deliver crowd is always happy to talk. I got a note, a Happy New Year thread was started from a listener. Oh no, was it Donald? Shoot, I should have looked up your name, sir. A listener said hello and Happy New Year, and we've had a couple other comments since then, so it's nice to check in and say hi. Hopefully everybody listening is having a lovely beginning of the new year, despite the craziness that is the America in 2021. Or if you're not in America, I guess it's a different kind of craziness wherever you are. So thanks for joining me today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye. I don't think I've talked about Trails of Tucana. Hold on. I'm going to check my phone. Check the Rattlebox Games website here. This is all going to get cut out.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.